My word. But anyway, the recording is now running for the assignment portion of the evening. Thank goodness I actually checked about that now. I'm so sorry. So most of that first section is not recorded. I'm sorry about that, guys. I will do a little video on it, a very short one, sort of repeating some of the stuff that I've said. But let's move on to the assignment, and that now has been recorded. Although I see there is a recording for 49 minutes. I don't know whether it is. Did somebody else click on record? Okay. I had a hand up earlier. It was Zukane. Yeah? Yes?
I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure maybe if it's on my side but I'm not getting the slides that you are referring to sometimes, the class. But I was just wondering if it's possible if you could please upload the slides.
Yes, I will. I will upload the slides. Can everybody else see the slides? Because I've got it set up where I'm on the one side and then I've got the slides next to me. Can everybody see that? Okay, all right. Okay, so
Yes.
So that is okay. Awesome. And is it clear enough, or must I do it full screen? Okay, great. At least then you get to see my face and my wild hand gestures, which makes it a bit more interactive. Good. So let's move on to the assignment, because I think that is important, and I do hope that you guys have come along. And even if we go over the time, please, we'll go over the time and we'll talk through and understand what needs to be done. So I'm comfortable as long as we leave here, as long as you leave here with a clear understanding as to what you need to do, but also most importantly, what my expectations are and what the expectations are in terms of the assessment, especially in terms of the assessment, the way the assessment has been structured, but also the way the assessment is going to be marked using the assessment marking schedule, because that's the guideline. That's the key. What are you going to get marks for, and how is it going to be marked? And that's really the framework. All right, so please, I'm going to go through the first question. The first question I've got quite a bit of detail on, especially in terms of structure, and I want you to use that as a sort of blueprint. Blueprint. Use that as a bit of a blueprint for the remainder of the assignment as well. So the question is this: research has shown that there's a substantial potential for line managers and human resource to share the responsibility of organizations' human resource activities more effectively and work together to achieve business goals. And ask you two questions: identify and discuss. It's important that you understand what those two things are, what those words mean, because those words are important. Identify, which means this is what it is. Discuss means let me explain what those things are. Let me explain what they mean. Let me explain it and let me discuss it a bit further. So identify, this is what it is. And now let me discuss it further. And what are we discussing? The role and functions of HR, human resource management in a business. So you identify what those roles and functions are, and then you discuss them further. I'll go into a bit more detail shortly. Explain why it is important for general and line managers to understand the concepts and techniques internal HR specialists use. In your response, refer to the role of line managers in a business. So what is a line manager? Again, a line manager has line responsibility for a team, if you can still remember. So this is the line manager, and he has literally the organizational structure. There's a line that connects them to their team, so line manager, specifically relating to employee motivation and engagement. So that is the question. What do you need to do? Define the key terms. Define what is human resource management. Define what is a line manager. Define what is that shared responsibility. Ultimately, You have to take a clear position on the statement. And what is the statement? The statement is that they must work together to achieve the organizational goals. So now the question is, do you agree with it? Why do you say so? Do you disagree with it? Why do you say so? Or is it conditional? In some cases they do, in other cases they don't. Provide the evidence. So for all of this, you must take a clear position on the statement. You must say, I agree. And this is so just in terms of academic writing, sometimes you can switch between first person and third person. So you can say, as an organization, blah, blah, blah. With regards to the statement, I agree that, and then you can change perspective again. Just make sure that it's not too jarring. Make sure that as you're writing that it sort of flows in terms of how you're writing. 3 or 5 academic sources, peer-reviewed articles within the last 5 years, always within the last 5 years. That's acceptable. Apply the theory to a practical business situation, and this is for where you start applying it. Here's the theory, and let me give you an example of how it would work in a business situation. Structure your essay with a clear introduction, 2 main sections, and a conclusion. Outstanding engagement with the academic literature and theory, in-depth application of the theory, clear logical flow between sections, and a critical analysis. So what's a critical analysis? A critical analysis simply says that this is one perspective, here's another perspective, this is my perspective. That is a critical evaluation. That's a critical analysis. Here's a perspective, here's another perspective, here's the evidence to support that perspective. Here's the evidence that supports that perspective. And here's, out of both of those, this is my perspective. And here's the evidence that support my perspective. Always it's about evidence. Always. And when I say evidence, it simply means you're referencing what you're saying. So what are the sections? A clear introduction, where you define what is human resource management, line managers, the shared responsibility. You paraphrase the statement in your own words as part of the introduction. You say, as the statement reads, as the statement reads, or the statement says this, and then present your thesis, your position. And then you end that. That's sort of how you end off the introduction. In this essay, I will present a case for the importance of line managers in human resource management to work closely together in order to achieve the organizational goals. And that's sort of how you end off the introduction. That's your thesis. They call it a thesis. It is your position. This is my position that I'm going to argue in the following 2 sections. Section A, the role and functions of HRM. It's about 25%, 30% of the total. And you talk about traditional HRM functions, strategic functions, and then support it with some academic support. You can look at Ulrich's HR business model, guess HRM, outcomes framework, Boxall pursuits, and this is where your textbook would come in terms of some of that academic support that you provide for some of these, the role and functions, the traditional role, the more strategic role and functions of the human resource management function. And then in B, you'll talk about the role of the line manager and HR collaboration. Now you're coming into your thesis. Okay, so in terms of my thesis, I believe that human resource managers and line managers need to closely work together in order to achieve the organizational goal. This is supported by, here's the evidence, and then you continue through that, following that. Direct employee contract, performance management, dynamics, a shared responsibility versus a implementation, strategic versus operational. And then you can also bring in some of the motivational theories to best support what you're saying in terms of the importance of the line manager as part of the partnership, business partners once again. And then practical applications around communication, recognition programs, and career development. When that person is up for performance review, it is not the HR managers that's going to sit with them, it is their line manager. And that is why working closer together is important. And then finally, in conclusion, in conclusion, or to conclude, or finally, or as part as the thesis 2. And to conclude, here's the key arguments once again, and then you go back to your original statement again. Do you agree, and why do you agree? I agree that, once again, the original statement is this and this and this, and I once agree with the evidence that based on the evidence that I've presented, I agree with the statement, or I disagree with the statement, or there's arguments for both. And this is always, and that's for this particular question, there is, especially how human resource management has evolved over the last while, especially the last 10, 15 years, there's definitely an argument for the fact that we're talking about business partners. We have to work together for the sake of the employee. And there's also where you can bring in things like wellness, although the following question is sort of deals with employee wellness. Let's have a look at the assessment criteria, because this is really your guideline. So what does it say? It says, so there's the literature, which is 35%, and then section 1, which is 10% of the total. And what's a good mark? A good mark, an excellent mark, outstanding application of the theory to the case study, in-depth application of the theory, outstanding versus essential application. And this not really the theory, but it's more so when we say case study, it's more so related to the statement that you have to argue for or against or both. Understanding the concept techniques, in-depth application. So this is the application of it, outstanding application. So what does that application mean? You've identified it, you've discussed it, and then you've taken that information and you've presented the thesis. Now, the application of the information that you've discussed and that you've identified. And that's the application part of it. Your assessment criteria is definitely a guideline. My only concern for this essay is that it carries such a heavy weight for the use of sources. So it's like 35, a third of the essay is just you having read stuff and you've referenced it. But it's more so the importance of that is how have you woven the theory and the research that you've done into your overall thesis, into your overall arguments. And that's the importance of it. Don't think that you're going to give me 10 articles and you almost like, okay, I must get 35% because I've read 10 articles and therefore, and therefore I must get a full 35%. It's not about reading articles and having a long reference list. It's about how have you engaged with that material and how is it interwoven into the thesis that you're presenting, especially for this first question or the first part of the assessment. So let me pause there and then please ask questions around question 1 or that first question of the assignment. I'll give you guys a bit of time. Please jump in. Sukanya?
I just want to confirm. I think you mentioned that in the first question, towards the end, there should be like a sort of conclusion that kind of answers the statement whether you agree or disagree. I just want to clarify that.
Yep, that is correct. Evaluate the original statement, and that should always be part of your conclusion, is to say that after presenting this evidence, I now conclude that I stand by, because your conclusion always links in with your introduction. So here you present the thesis and say, this is what I'm going to prove. And then you go about proving it. And then you revisit it again and say, okay, now that I've proven it, I stand by it. And you say, this is why I stand by it. And you give a more summarized version of it. You say, I stand by it because based on all of the studies, based on the research, based on this, it further supports my thesis or it further supports my viewpoint. Does that make sense, Sukanya? Great. Andrew, you also wanted to ask something?
Yeah. So the way I'm seeing it being set out, right? Is question 2 still part of assessment 1, or is it a different part? Is it part of assessment 2? Because I'm not really seeing the link here.
There is no link between these two questions. They two. It's almost like two separate essays. Yeah.
Okay. So, but
it will be in one document. Yeah. So
okay.
So you're asking, so how do I introduce both questions? So you can most probably do a mini intro, and you say, this essay consists of answering two specific questions. The first question deals with this, and the second question deals with this, and then you can go and you can use that as your introduction, and then you start off with question 1, and you can clearly say as a title. I prefer titles. I want you to use titles and subtitles, but not too much, not on a third level. A title and a subtitle. So you can have introduction, and then you can maybe have something just underneath that as a subtitle. So you can say that, because you'll have a cover page, and you'll have a page of contents. And as part of that page of contents, you'll have maybe introduction, question 1, question 2, references or reference list. So that might be your page of contents. And then your next page, your third page, would be a brief, just like a couple of, remember the word count, eh? So don't go crazy. You say, assessment 2, you can call it assessment 1 introduction. And you can say, this assessment 1 deals with 2 fundamental questions. The one is understanding the close relationship of line managers and HR managers. And the second part of this assessment deals with the question around employee well-being. And that's it. And then the next page, question 1. There's your first essay. And then the next page, and then the next section would be question 2, and there's your second essay, and then you'll have a reference list. How's that? Okay. How does that feel in terms of the sort of the layout of it?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. It's basically it is going to sound bizarre, but it's basically a high school business report where they give you 2 questions and you split them in half. Basically, you're doing one full documented essay and another full documented essay with joining conclusions and introductions, basically.
I would, yes, I would. So your assessment, so then you can call it an assessment conclusion. You say, this report or this assessment dealt with 2 fundamental questions. The first talked about this and this and this, in which it was concluded that they need to work together. And the second essay dealt with employee well-being, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can link the two. You can say both of these are important elements of the human resource manager function and role in the organization that leads to increased performance and better engagement. So that would be a good way of sort of tying the two together, because ultimately they do tie together, but they also 2 very distinct questions, and they require 2 different approaches. Good. Jade?
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, and is it the same word count for both of them? It's not 2 separate word counts, right?
It is a combined word count, yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Jade, I have to read this, eh? And there's a lot of you. so please.
Yeah. But it's still 10% over,
in a class. You know what? I'm a lot more lenient, so I'll be comfortable with like 15%. But obviously, once you start, giving me a 4,000 word essay, then I'm gonna go, hey, this is a bit rough on me. Because imagine there's 20, it's how many in a class? I think there's 15 or so in a class, times 2,500 words. So now you're looking already at 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 words of reading.
Yeah, no,
All
it
right.
is a lot. But thank you.
Alrighty, good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bontley, you got your hand up?
Yes, sir. I'm a little bit confused. So it's one essay but has two different sections?
It is. Let's have a look at what the assessment, the reading of the assessment. So let me share. My apologies. Let me share this. Let me share that. And let's read through it together because I think that's important. So what does it say? Let me just close that. It says here, this assessment aims to evaluate students' ability to analyze and discuss concepts learned so that they can apply knowledge, blah, blah, blah. Instructions. 1. So there's the first section. 2. And there's the second section. So it doesn't tell you that it is one essay with two different questions. So we can agree. Let me just have a look. Style and audience, academic content section for developing skills and competencies. Okay. So what I would suggest in terms of the structure and what the structure would look like would be an assessment introduction. So you can say assessment 1 introduction, or you can say application-based essay. So it does say application-based essay. So it's one essay. So you can say essay introduction, or you can say assessment 1 introduction, and you say this assessment deals with two fundamental questions. One, it deals with the question of human resource managers and how they work together with first-line managers, and aims to answer the question, do they have to work together in order to deliver the organization's results? The second essay will deal with employee well-being and the importance of it, using the Unity Futures Workplaces 2030 report as a framework to better understand employee well-being within the organization. That's your introduction, assessment 1 introduction. Turn the page or new page, and then you'll have essay 1. And you can call it essay 1, you can call it question 1. I would just say question 1. Question 1. The impact of, you just have question 1, and then you can have a little introduction, not a little, you can have your proper introduction for your essay. So treat it as 2 essays, but 1 submission. The submission, which is a total document, will have a small introduction and a small conclusion. But if you don't have that, I'm not going to mark you down. If you do have it, thumbs up, because then it's one cohesive document. But if you don't have it, I'm also not going to go, I'm going to give you less marks because of that. So if you choose to treat it as one assessment with, because essentially then you'll have an introduction and another introduction, and for question 1 you'll have another introduction, and for question 1 you'll have a conclusion, and for question 2 you'll have an introduction and a conclusion, then you'll have another conclusion, which is an overall conclusion, and it's not really a conclusion, it is just saying that this assessment has now come to an end. So if you have it, great, in the form that I've just mentioned, which is basically just telling me this thing is an assessment consisting of 2 essays. Essay 1 is about this, essay 2 is about that. And your conclusion would be, this assessment consisted of 2 essays. The first essay dealt with and concluded that. The second essay dealt with employee well-being and concluded that. And that's good. If you have that, great. If you don't have it, I won't penalize you. But what I do expect is that you have a very clear, for the 2 individual essays, for the 2 individual questions, that you have a very clear introduction and a very clear conclusion and very clear sections nominating those 2 or separating those 2. Does that make sense, Pontley?
Yes, sir. And then I just want to add, you said that at the end it needs an overall conclusion. Do we also need an overall introduction? Like before starting the question, do we need to like state that this is going to be like an essay consisting of 2 questions?
You can, but if you don't have it, I won't mark you down.
Okay, thank you, Sam.
Okay, so I won't penalize you if you don't have it, But if you do have it, that's great, because you're telling me that this is one assessment in two different parts, which is always good. It's always good if you're submitting something that you sort of bind it together, in a cohesiveness, in a whole. All right. Good. Okay. Any? Yes, Andrew.
So, okay, cool. So thank you for helping me understand the layout. The next question I have is then in terms of, because 2,500 words for this entire
It's not
essay is highly concise.
Yes, it is.
In order to add enough depth and whatever. And generally for me, I like adding examples, and that sometimes takes a little bit of a word count. So do you want me to get rid of examples and then just focus purely on content and theory and application of theory, or do you want any examples linking to each particular question?
If you look at some of the sort of some of where, just a breakdown. So this is, I'm not going to ever give you this level of detail around a breakdown for an essay. I'm just giving it to you once as indication of how you need to approach your essays going forward. So if you look at what I've put in here, it says where applicable, especially where you feel that through an example. Remember, an example must serve a purpose. An example, this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it deals with understanding motivation within a workplace. For example, if a person has, so it serves a purpose. It is something very complex that you don't have sufficient time to unpack. You don't have a whole page to talk about Maslow and give details.
Okay.
But you mention it in one sentence, and then you use an example that illustrates in more, not in academic language, but in more sort of in simple way what this thing is. So an example should always serve a purpose. It's not just here's this is and here's an example. Here's this is, oh, and here's an example. It should definitely serve a purpose, and it should sort of serve the overall structure of what you're wanting to say, because ultimately every paragraph follows a T principle, which is theory, explanation, application. T, like a cup of tea, and it should flow. There's also, I mean, once you get into second year and third year and you start getting, writing longer pieces, there's connecting words, there's connecting sentences, how you're connecting, and then there's golden threads, how you use the same example throughout in order to create this golden thread throughout your entire written work. So all of those things will come later. 2,500 words is not a lot. You'll find, introduction is like 100 words already, and you're like, what? I've like written 5 sentences, So for me, what conciseness means, that this is you have to know the work in order to be concise. So there's a saying in writing, it takes time to be brief. It is a letter that Benjamin Franklin wrote to somebody that passed away. What was the guy that got killed? To Lincoln. And he said, and he apologized. He starts off the apology, says, I do apologize for not taking the time to be brief. It's this principle that brevity takes time. It takes time to take something and really be concise about it. Because it's easy to write a whole lot of stuff. It's easy to write a whole lot of stuff, but it takes time to really look at it and go, okay, is this word okay in the sentence? Do I need another word? Can I shorten the sentence? Does the sentence still have meaning? Does it still serve the rest of the paragraph? Does it still serve the rest of the narrative? Does it still serve the rest of the story? So for me, one, as a first year student, it's meant to reduce the the marking load on us as educators, because imagine it was 5,000 words, and again there's a whole lot of you, and the greater the marking load, the more the mistakes happen, and also the quality of the marking decreases exponentially. So the more you mark, the poorer your results are, and that's just a fact. Trust me, I've been in this game for the last 13 years, and I've been part of marking groups where we marked 1,000 to 2,000 papers as a group of 5-6 lecturers together, and we've done the research that the more you mark, the poorer the results, overall results. So that's one. And two, it is to almost force you to be brief. It forces you to really focus on what you're writing instead of just sort of putting a whole lot of stuff down. So what I would suggest, Andrew, is you write everything. You end up with a 5,000 word essay. And so that's draft one. Now you start working through it and say, okay, now this is a paragraph of 200 words. What am I saying in this paragraph? I'm saying this and this and this. Can I say it with fewer words? Can I say it with less? How does, and that's how you slowly work through it, and things start getting together. And I promise you that takes time. That takes time and takes skill. That first year students don't often have. And so it's a great challenge.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I'm third year, by the way. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you doing a combination of courses?
Yes, I am.
Okay, good. Then you understand what the expectations are then. Okay.
Yes,
good.
Thank you, sir.
Alrighty. Excellent. Are there any other questions before I go on to question 2? And I also just want to sort of start wrapping it up because it is getting late. All right. So let me, what I'll do is I'll see what the recording is like. And if I can most probably cut it into 2 different pieces when I upload it. Second question, and here I'm not going to go into great detail. I'm just going to give you a real overview. It says critically explain innovative ways in which business managers and entrepreneurs, HR practitioners work practically together. And then the second part of it discuss how business managers, HR practitioners can work together. And it's the same process again. You have to choose one of the 4 workplace areas, which is either emotional workplace, physical workplace, smart workplace, a purposeful workplace. And then you then have to start looking at things like, and I did put this through, you can see I put this through Claude. Yeah, through Claude. And I sort of worked through it and I looked at the output and it makes sense. I pulled the report into it and I asked it, how would you give a framework, a very basic framework to answer this question. And sort of this is what it came up with. It talks about connecting wellness to a chosen area. So once you've chosen your area, which is emotional, physical, smart, or purposeful, demonstrate innovative collaboration, explain specific practical ways, address future transformation, use work-related wellness theory. So now we're talking about the wellness, and this is where Helia comes in. Provide concrete examples. I'll provide an example. Part B is about developing skills and competencies. Link your chosen work area. Again, emotional, physical, smart, or purposeful. Identify future ready competencies. Show some collaborative development approaches. Address performance management evolution. And include some practical implication. So again, an introduction. And then again, there's not a specific statement that you have to agree to or not. There's simply 2 questions. There's 2 questions, which says critically explain, and the other one is discuss. So critically explain, and the other one is discuss. And that's what you're doing. So you're critically explaining, you're going through all of the different aspects of it, and then you're discussing the workplace area, future ready competencies, collaboration, and so forth. This is just a guideline. Please do not use these subtitles as is. It is a guideline for you to look at the different parts of your essay and how you're going to answer your essay. You might not follow the same sort of guideline. You might approach it from a different perspective, which is also okay. This question is a lot more open and less prescriptive than the first question. The first question is very much, here's a statement, here's a breakdown. This is how you need to answer it, or this is how I suggest you answer it. Let me rephrase. This one is a bit more open. Here's a framework, introduction of part A and a part B, which is the two questions with a different weighting to it. And here's some stuff to look at. Collaboration, transformation, wellness theories, and some examples. Again, your link to your workplace area, future reader competencies, some collaboration again, performance management evolution, how it has changed over time, and then some practical implementation as well for you. And again, use your assessment criteria as the guideline. Your assessment criteria will tell you exactly what and how you need to answer the assessment. I'm mindful of time, and I do know that I've kept you guys quite some time. Are there any questions in? Are there any questions?